just seconds before the car crash. My best friend threw herself over me. When she woke up, she had amnesia. She mistook my fiance as her own boyfriend. To help her recover, our group of 5 friends decided to play along with the lie. The first month, the pre-wedding trip that was supposed to be mine was given to her. She held Ethan Sterling's hand, kissing him to the cheers of our friends, leaving me behind to carry all 4 of their bags. Second month, my best friend moved into the house Ethan and I had bought for our marriage. My name was erased from the deed and replaced with hers. My sister Clara comforted me. Chloe, Natalie only lost her memory because she saved your life. We are just playing along to help her recover. It's temporary. I believed her. I forced a smile and played my part in their endless ridiculous drama, scene after scene until the 9th month. I finished my bridal makeup and rushed to the wedding venue, only to find Natalie Davis already wearing my wedding dress, smiling brightly as she leaned on Ethan's arm to greet the guests. Claire, I patted my shoulder and tried to soothe me. Natalie accidentally found her dress last night. We couldn't bear to break her heart and tell her the truth, so we decided to let her have this wedding first. Ethan's best friend, Tyler, chimed in with a grin. Yeah, Chloe, you've stepped back 8 times. Already, what's one more? My heart ached, and my engagement ring suddenly felt suffocatingly tight on my finger. I looked up and saw Natalie wearing my backup wedding band. It fit her finger perfectly. That's when I realized that the wedding dress, the one that had felt a size too small on me, fit her like a glove. All the guests knew the truth, yet they still cheered and loudly called her Mrs. Sterling. It turned out that the only one who actually took this temporary lie seriously was me. I let out a bitter laugh and slipped off the tight wedding ring. If that's how they wanted it, then I would let them have their 9th and final piece of theater. The wedding ring clinked loudly as I threw it into the trash can. The 2 in front of me froze in shock. Clara frowned, opening her mouth to speak, but Natalie's squeal of joy cut her off. Chloe, you're finally here. Look at me. Don't I look absolutely gorgeous today? She twirled in front of me, holding up the skirt of her gown, chatting away as if nothing was wrong. I passed by the bridal shop a while ago and casually told Ethan how beautiful this dress was. I can't believe he remembered. And this ring it exactly my style. Ethan told me everything. Thank you so much for helping him plan the wedding these past few months. Chloe, I'm so lucky to have a best friend. Like you, I stood frozen. No wonder the dress I spent months choosing was suddenly swapped by Ethan at the last minute. No wonder. The backup ring had a diamond twice the size of my original one. The wedding I had painstakingly planned was never meant for me in the first place. I let out a mocking laugh at myself. Clara panicked, quickly cutting in before I could say a word. Of course you're beautiful, Natalie. You are the most stunning bride ever. We have to capture this moment. Tyler caught on quickly and raised his camera. Yeah, exactly. Everyone, let's get together for a group photo. Hearing this, the guests gathered around, holding party poppers. Clara and Tyler quickly squeezed in next to Ethan and Natalie. The 4 of them stood in the front row. It was a perfect, complete picture. Tyler shoved the camera into my hands. Chloe, you're the best photographer here. Take some good shots for us. The spotlight fell on them. Natalie leaned her head against Ethan's shoulder, her white gown glowing. Ethan looked down at her, his eyes filled with pure tenderness. Everyone crowded around them, congratulating the perfect couple. It was exactly the wedding I had dreamed of for years. Someone in the crowd started chanting, "Kiss her, kiss her." Ethan's ears flushed red. He hesitated for a second, but Natalie was already on her tiptoes, pressing her lips against his. My mind went completely blank. As cheers erupted around me, Tyler raised his voice urging me, "Chloe, what are you doing? Snap the picture. Capture the most important moment of their lives." I raised the camera mechanically. Bang. A party popper went off amidst the falling confetti. I pressed the shutter. 1 shot, 2 shots, a dozen shots. Amid the rising cheers and screams, Ethan held Natalie, switching poses for one kiss after another. Everyone was laughing and smiling. I was the only one with tears stinging my eyes. After what felt like an eternity, a timid voice spoke beside me. "Excuse me, miss. The reception has started. Do you need me to add a seat for you?" I snapped back to reality and realized the lobby was empty. Everyone had already taken their seats in the grand hall. All 300 seats were filled. And as fate would have it, there was no seat for me. A bitter smile played on my lips. No thank you. Since there was no room for me, I didn't want it anymore. This 5-person friendship, I was officially done with it. Leaving the reception, I submitted my resignation letter to the company. The HR manager replied instantly. Are you sure about this, Chloe? Do you need us to inform Mr. Sterling? No need to tell him. The HR manager didn't push further. All right, it's late. Please come to the office tomorrow morning to hand in your official paperwork. After confirming, I went home to pack. My phone buzzed on Snapchat in the group chat. Named Natalie's recovery project. Clara tagged me. Chloe, did you throw a tantrum and leave again? Natalie was so looking forward to this wedding with Ethan. We couldn't bear to let her down. So we planned a mock wedding for her. We were worried you'd be upset. So, we didn't tell you the truth. Tyler chimed in with his usual mocking tone. Yeah, Chloe. Natalie lost her memory saving your life.
Don't be so petty all the time.
Ethan sent only a few short words. Be good. I'll throw you an even bigger wedding next time. Promises like this, I had heard them 1,000 times. I waited and waited, only to receive broken promises time and time again. This time, I was done waiting. With a swipe of my finger, I left the group chat. Then I turned back to my packing. Under my pillow, I found a journal. It was the love diary Ethan had written for me the day Natalie moved into our house. Worried she would feel uncomfortable, the three of them threw away our couple photos and our customized couple ornaments. I erased every single trace of my history with Ethan. Only this journal had been secretly hidden by me. It had been my only comfort through countless sleepless nights, helping me survive the pain. But from now on, I didn't need it anymore. I tossed the journal into the trash. I turned around only to notice that the roses I had planted on the balcony had been replaced with sunflowers, Natalie's favorite. The once minimalist walls were now covered in her cute stickers. Without me realizing it, Natalie had slowly filled every corner of my home, erasing me piece by piece. Natalie was barefoot, clinging to Ethan's, walked out without looking back. Oak chicken wings for Natalie, braised pork for Ethan, fresh juice for Clara, potato chips for Tyler. Dozens of items meticulously listed. Not a single thing was for me. Once again, I was completely excluded from their world. My heart went entirely cold. I didn't want to waste my breath arguing. I hung up the phone and blocked his number. The next day, carrying my resignation letter, I hadn't even stepped through the office doors when Natalie rushed toward me, followed by an aggressive crowd of reporters. Before I could react, Natalie slapped me hard across the face. A notebook was thrown to the ground, splaying open before me. It was the love diary Ethan had written for me, the one I had thrown in the trash yesterday. Chloe Miller, I was wondering why you refused to leave my husband's house. It turns out you've been fantasizing about my husband in this diary. Every single day. We're supposed to be best friends. How could you do something so disgusting? My head spun from the slap. Before I could catch my breath, the reporter swarmed me, shoving microphones and cameras into my face. Miss Miller, is it true that you stayed as Mr. Sterling's secretary for 6 years, even turning down high-paying executive offers from other companies, just to climb into his bed? Have you been staying at Miss Davis's home these past few months, just to steal her husband? The blinding camera flashes made it impossible to open my eyes. Passers-by stopped to watch, and a wave of insults washed over me. My head spun, but I couldn't take it anymore. I screamed out the truth. I didn't write those diaries. Ethan wrote them for me. You're the one with amnesia. You mistook Ethan as your boyfriend. The person Ethan was supposed to marry was me. The crowd fell silent for a second. In the next moment, Clara pushed through the crowd and rushed at me.
Lop, lap.
Another hard blow landed on the other side of my face. With tearful eyes, Clara turned to the cameras and apologized. I'm so sorry, everyone. My sister has been obsessing over Mr. Sterling for years. But I never imagined she would write something so disgusting, let alone slander Mr. Sterling like this. Holding my burning cheeks, I stared at her in utter disbelief. Tyler and Ethan pushed through the crowd and stepped forward. Tyler sneered at me. Chloe, you're trying to steal Natalie's husband. Are you really that desperate for a man? Ethan suppressed the guilt in his eyes and spoke with cold composure. Miss Miller and I are just ordinary colleagues. We have never crossed any boundaries. My only wife is, and always will be, Natalie. The very last spark of hope in my heart was brutally extinguished. The crowd jeered mockingly. I knew it. How could Mr. Sterling ever want to marry someone like her? She must have fabricated the whole diary, fantasizing about her best friend's husband, and then turning around to frame them. What a pathetic bitch. The harsh words pierced my ears like needles. In the chaos, someone shoved me hard from behind. I lost my balance and fell painfully onto the hard pavement. Ethan's eyes contracted. He instinctively stepped forward to help me, but Natalie grabbed him, clutching her head in pain. Ethan, my head hurts so much. The three of them panicked. instantly rushing to help her away. I looked down. A pool of blood was slowly soaking through my pants. Seeing the blood, the crowd gasped in horror. The reporters and onlookers finally began to scatter in panic. Right before I blacked out from the excruciating pain, my phone buzzed with a message from Ethan. Natalie's condition will worsen if she finds out the truth. I've called an ambulance for you. Consider today a lesson. Don't ever say things like that again. Ethan, you got your wish. There will never be a next time. When I opened my eyes again, the doctor handed me a medical report. His eyes filled with pity. I'm sorry, Miss Miller. We couldn't save the baby. My mind went completely blank. I stared numbly at the miscarriage report. It turned out I had been pregnant for 2 months. I had lost my child before I even knew she existed. Sharp, agonizing pain ripped through my chest. My phone buzzed. Natalie had sent me a photo of her own pregnancy test. My entire body went rigid. Her messages kept coming. Chloe, let's be honest, amnesia actually cured 6 months ago. But I fell in love with Ethan. So, I decided to keep pretending to play along. I saw your medical checkup report. I knew you were pregnant. Today was entirely intentional. I am the only one allowed to give Ethan a child. Look around you. Everyone is celebrating my baby's arrival. In our world of 5, you are nothing but trash. She forwarded a screenshot of a group chat. The group name was the Core 4. I wasn't in it. I scrolled through the messages. One by one, the 4 of them were chatting excitedly. In just 3 hours, they had sent thousands of messages. They talked about who would be the godparents and how to decorate the nursery. They discussed baby names and wondered if the child would look more like Ethan or Natalie. My heart froze over completely. I took the miscarriage report and signed it. Then I handed it to the doctor along with my resignation letter. Doctor, please deliver these to Ethan Sterling for me, since I was nothing but trash in their world of 5. Then for the rest of my life, I wouldn't leave any room for them either. On the other side of town, Natalie was gently rubbing her belly, surrounded by the adoration of Clara and Tyler. Watching this scene, Ethan felt a nagging headache. That night, he had drunk too much. In his drunken stupor, he had mistaken Natalie for Chloe, didn't expect her to get pregnant from just that one night. Ethan sighed heavily, trying to reassure himself it was fine. Chloe would understand. He would make it up to her later, just like he had done countless times before. Yet for some reason, an indescribable sense of dread washed over him. Making an excuse to get some fresh air, Ethan stepped out of the ward and dialed Chloe's number. The call wouldn't go through. He had been blocked. He tried sending a message on Snapchat. Blocked there too. The dread in his chest intensified. A moment later, a doctor rushed over with a grave expression. Mr. Sterling, we have reviewed the medical files. Miss Davis's amnesia was fully cured 6 months ago. Ethan instinctively denied it. That's impossible. The doctor gave him a complex look. Also, Miss Miller had some documents for me to deliver to you. Ethan frowned as he took the papers. When he saw the resignation letter, his heart skipped a beat. Instinctively, he flipped to the next page. The document underneath made him freeze, as if doused in ice water. The paper did not weigh more than a few ounces, but in Ethan Sterling's hands, it possessed the density of lead. He stared at the clinical stamp at the bottom of the page, pathology and obstetrics division, spontaneous abortion secondary to blunt physical trauma, and acute hemorrhagic shock. Beneath it, the gestational age was typed in stark black font, 8 weeks, 3 days. And beneath that, in Chloe Miller's precise, familiar handwriting, the handwriting that had organized his schedules, corrected his corporate filings, and left sticky notes on his morning coffee for 6 years, was a single scrawled line. Consider our debt settled. You owe me nothing, and I leave you with less. Ethan's breath hitched in his throat. The hospital corridor smelled of antiseptic and ozone from the storm lashing against the glass panes outside. The fluorescent lights overhead hummed with a low, vibrating whine that seemed to bore directly into his skull. Mr. Sterling? Dr. Harrison remained standing before him, his arms folded. Behind his white coat, his expression stripped of all professional courtesy. Miss Miller was admitted with severe internal hemorrhaging. When she arrived, her systolic pressure was 70/40. She refused general anesthesia during the curettage because she wanted to remain lucid enough to sign her discharge papers. Ethan's mouth opened, but only a dry, whistling gasp came out. She was pregnant. For 2 months, Dr. Harrison replied, his voice flat and cutting. A pregnancy that ended approximately 3 hours ago on the asphalt outside your corporate headquarters, while your security team held the perimeter to let reporters film. Miss Davis's dramatic entrance. Ethan stumbled backward, his shoulder striking the concrete wall. 2 months. 2 months ago was the night of their anniversary, the only night in the last 9 months when he had managed to escape the suffocating circus of Natalie's recovery. He had taken Chloe to the cottage by the lake, held her as she wept in the dark, and whispered into her hair that this madness was almost over, that Natalie's neural scans were improving, that he would make everything right. He had promised her an empire. He had promised her a cathedral wedding. And then, this morning, with 30 cameras flashing in her face, he had looked her dead in the eye and said, "Miss Miller and I are just ordinary colleagues. My only wife is, and always will be, Natalie." Where is she? Ethan choked out, his fingers crushing the medical report into a jagged ball. Where is Chloe? She left 30 minutes ago, Dr. Harrison said. Against medical advice.
She
Took a cab in the middle of a torrential downpour while actively recovering from surgical intervention. She left no forwarding address, no emergency contact, and explicitly signed an order denying your party any access to her updated records. The doctor paused, pulling a slender manila folder from beneath his arm. And as for Miss Davis's neurology files, Dr. Harrison added, tossing the folder onto a plastic bench between them. Dr. Ross from St. Jude's forwarded these pursuant to the legal audit Miss Miller filed before she walked out.
Miss
Davis's post-traumatic amnesia resolved fully on October 14th of last
year.
Exactly 211 days ago. She has been medically sound, fully cognitive, and legally competent for over 7 months. The world tilted. Ethan looked down at the folder. October 14th. October 14th was the week Natalie had asked to move into the house.
The
week she had claimed she could not sleep unless Ethan sat by her bedside. The week Clara had looked Chloe in the eye and said, "Chloe, she took the impact for
you."
If Ethan doesn't stay by her side, her brain's swelling might relapse. Every tear, every fragile, stumbling step, every time Natalie had tilted her head with that wide-eyed, innocent confusion and asked, "Ethan, why does that girl look at you like that?"
It had all been a play.
And Ethan had not just been an actor in it. He had been the executioner. When Ethan pushed open the door to room 402, the room fell dead silent. Natalie was sitting up in the hospital bed, propped against 4 goose down pillows Tyler had ordered from a boutique downtown. Clara was peeling organic grapes, slicing them into neat halves and placing them into a porcelain dish. Tyler was leaning against the windowsill, scrolling through his tablet with a satisfied smirk on his face.
Ethan.
Natalie beamed, extending her slender, manicured hands. She had washed off the makeup from the morning's media spectacle, leaving her face pale and dewy, the picture of an angelic, fragile victim. "You were gone so long.
The
doctor said my blood pressure is a little unstable because of the stress Chloe
caused today."
Did the security team get the press under control? Clara didn't even look up from her grapes. Chloe has completely lost her mind.
Ethan.
Slapping Natalie like that? Slandering you in front of the reporters?
I
know she's my sister, but after what happened today, you need to file a restraining order. She's dangerous. She's obsessed with you. Tyler chuckled, crossing his ankles. Told you months ago, Ethan. You kept her around as a secretary out of pity, and she mistook professional courtesy for romance. She actually thought a few mock-up wedding plans were hers?
Pure
delusion. At least the press bought the narrative. Sterling Corp stock is already rebounding because of the devoted husband angle. Ethan stood in the center of the room. He didn't move.
He didn't speak.
The rain slammed against the high windows with the force of thrown gravel.
The
water dripped from the hem of his tailored suit jacket, pooling on the polished linoleum floor, dark and heavy like engine oil. Ethan? Natalie's smile wavered slightly, her brow furrowed in that practiced, helpless expression she had perfected over 9 months. What's wrong, honey? Does your head hurt? Ethan slowly raised his hand. He let the crumpled ball of paper fall from his fingers. It rolled across the blanket, stopping against Natalie's hip. Natalie blinked, picking it up with 2 delicate fingers. What is this? Her eyes scanned the header. For a split second, a fraction of a millisecond, her mask slipped. Her pupils contracted into tiny, frozen points of calculation. Then, just as quickly, she gasped, throwing the paper aside as if it had burned. Ethan, what is this terrible lie? Natalie's voice trembled instantly, tears springing to her eyes with terrifying speed. Chloe was pregnant?
And
She's trying to blame us for her losing it? How could she forge something so vile just to ruin our wedding day?
She didn't forge it, Ethan said.
His voice was terrifyingly calm. It had none of the warmth, none of the commanding authority, none of the desperate indulgence he had displayed for the last 9 months. It sounded like an iron gate swinging shut over a tomb. Clara scoffed, picking up the paper from the blanket. Oh, please. Chloe has always been melodramatic. When we were kids, if I got a new doll, she'd pretend to scrape her knee just to steal the attention. She probably took some hormone pills to falsify a test. Smack. The sound was not loud, but it cut Clara off mid-sentence. Ethan had not hit her. He had slammed Dr. Ross's medical audit onto the bedside table, shattering the glass vase holding the dozen white lilies Tyler had brought in. Water and crushed white petals spilled across the nightstand, soaking into Clara's lap. Read page 3, Clara, Ethan whispered. Clara froze, her hands hovering in the air. Tyler straightened up from the windowsill, his smirk vanishing as his eyes narrowed. Ethan, what the hell are you doing? Natalie's recovery is fragile. Read page 3. Ethan roared. The shout tore from his throat with such raw, feral violence that Natalie physically recoiled, shrinking back against the headboard. Clara's hands shook as she turned the cover. Her eyes darted across the official seals of St. Jude's Neurological Institute, across the EEG printouts, across the definitive diagnostic conclusion signed on October 14th. Patient exhibits full cognitive recovery, retrograde and anterograde amnesia, completely resolved. No neurological deficits observed. She was cured, Ethan said, his chest heaving, his eyes fixed on Natalie with a gaze so hollow and venomous that the air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. 7 months ago, before we gave her Chloe's bedroom, before we took Chloe's name off the deed, before we spent $400,000 on a wedding dress that was tailored to your measurements, Natalie. Natalie's breath caught. She didn't cry. The tears that had been welling in her eyes simply stopped, drying up like dew on hot asphalt. The innocence vanished from her face, replaced by a smooth, cold, predatory stillness. Ethan. Tyler stepped forward, putting a hand on Ethan's shoulder. Listen to
me.
Even if her memory came back early, you have to understand the pressure she was under. She saved Chloe's life. If it weren't for Natalie, Chloe would have been crushed in that passenger seat. Natalie deserved some happiness. Ethan spun around and drove his fist directly into Tyler's jaw. The crack of bone was sickeningly loud. Tyler crashed into the metal floor stand, toppling it to the floor with a deafening clatter, before collapsing onto his side, clutching his bleeding mouth in sheer disbelief. Ethan, Clara shrieked, jumping to her feet. Are you crazy? Tyler is your best friend. Tyler has been shorting Sterling Corp stock through an offshore shell company for 5 months, Ethan said, staring down at the man on the floor. Using the instability of my personal life to manipulate our public valuation. Chloe left the audit on my desk this morning alongside her resignation. Ethan turned his head slowly, looking at Clara.
And you?
My sister-in-law. Or what would have been my sister-in-law. Ethan let out a laugh that sounded like tearing metal. Chloe paid off your mother's hospice debt. Chloe covered your tuition at the Design Academy. Chloe gave you 20% of her own salary every month so you could pretend to be a high society stylist. And you slapped her on national television so you could stay in Natalie's circle. Clara's face went completely white. Ethan, no. I did it for the family. I thought Natalie was a better match for the company. Get out, Ethan said. Ethan, please. Get out of this room. Get out of my building. And if I ever see your face near my office again, I will have corporate security throw you into the street like the stray dog you are. Clara burst into frantic, ugly sobs, scrambling backward toward the door, dragging a dazed, bleeding Tyler with her. The door clicked shut behind them, leaving only Ethan and Natalie in the ruined, flower-strewn room. Natalie sat motionless in the bed. She pulled the blanket up slightly over her knees, her expression entirely calm now. The mask was off and she didn't bother putting it back on. You're pathetic, Ethan, she said softly. Ethan's fists trembled at his sides. Why?
Why?
Natalie tilted her head, a cold smile curling the edges of her lips. Because Chloe had everything. She had your devotion. She had your brilliant career. She had that disgustingly pure, quiet dignity that made everyone around her feel small. And what did I have? I was her pretty little sidekick. The fun friend who drank too much and never amounted to anything. She leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with manic triumph. When that truck hit us, and I woke up with a concussion, I realized something wonderful. The moment I claimed I forgot who I was, you looked at me with guilt. And guilt is so much easier to manipulate than love. Love has boundaries.
Guilt
Will make a man hand over his entire life on a silver platter. She tapped her stomach lightly through the sheets. And now, I'm carrying your heir, Ethan. You can hate me all you want. You can throw papers and punch Tyler until your hands bleed. But in 7 months, I will give birth to the Sterling family's first grandchild. You will marry me, you will smile for the press, and you will spend the rest of your life paying for the child you murdered in Chloe's belly. Ethan looked at her. He didn't scream. He didn't hit her. He simply looked at her with the utter, desolate revulsion of a man staring at a venomous snake coiled in his bed. You're not having a child with me, Natalie, Ethan whispered. Natalie laughed softly. We slept together, darling. Remember that drunken night in the penthouse? When you called me Chloe in the dark? I remember, Ethan said, his voice dropping into an icy abyss. And tomorrow morning, my legal team will be here with a court order for a prenatal paternity test and a full psychiatric evaluation. If you are pregnant, the child will be taken the moment it draws breath and placed in custody where you will never lay eyes on it. If you are lying, Ethan stepped close to the bed, leaning down until his eyes were inches from hers. I will ensure you spend the next 10 years in a state penitentiary for corporate fraud, criminal extortion, and reckless endangerment. Natalie's smile finally froze. The blood drained from her lips. Ethan turned his back on her and walked out into the corridor, leaving her alone. In the cold, white room, Chloe Miller did not cry in the cab. She sat in the back of the generic yellow sedan, pressing a folded wool scarf against her lower abdomen to quell the deep, dull thrumming ache that radiated through her pelvis. Outside, the city of Oakhaven blurred past in streaks of neon and gray rain. The towering glass monolith of Sterling Enterprises shrank in the rearview mirror until it was swallowed entirely by the mist. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a burner phone she had bought from a convenience store across from the hospital. Her real phone, the one containing 6 years of text messages, anniversary photos, group chats, and thousands of voice notes from Ethan, sat at the bottom of a biohazard waste bin in St. Jude's emergency wing. The screen lit up with an incoming call from an unlisted number. Chloe pressed the receiver to her ear.
Yes.
The private jet is fueled and cleared on the tarmac at Bradley Field. A gravelly, composed voice spoke through the speaker. My medical team is on
board.
They have blood units and post-operative monitoring equipment waiting for
you.
Chloe let out a long, shuddering breath. Thank you, Mr. Vance. Marcus Vance was the founder and majority shareholder of Vanguard Global, Sterling Enterprises' fiercest international competitor. 5 years ago, before Ethan's company had even gone public, Marcus had tried to recruit Chloe with an unprecedented 8-figure executive package. She had turned it down without a second thought, choosing instead to stay by Ethan's side as a $2,000 a month secretary, drafting Ethan's roadmaps, correcting his financial models, and helping him build an empire from a rented garage. Marcus had told her then, "You are building a kingdom for a boy who will trade you for the first shiny trinket that crosses his path, Miss Miller.
When you
realize the walls you built have no door for you, call this number." She had kept the card tucked behind her driver's license for 5 years. Don't thank me, Marcus said bluntly. I am a venture capitalist, not a charity. I am buying the sharpest strategic brain in North America for pennies on the dollar. You have 3 months to recover in our Zurich facility. After that, you take the helm of Vanguard's European restructuring division. Understood, Chloe said. One condition, Miss Miller. Name it. When Sterling Enterprises begins to collapse under Ethan Sterling's catastrophic mismanagement, and it will, within 6 months, you do not show mercy. You do not return to save him. Chloe looked down at her hands. Her fingers were bare. The skin where the engagement ring had sat for 2 years was pale and slightly indented, a ghost of an old promise. Mr. Vance, Chloe replied, her voice steady and chillingly serene.
Ethan.
Sterling died in that car crash 9 months ago. The man living in his house is just a stranger I used to work for. She hung up the phone, snapped the SIM card between her fingers, and dropped it into the cab's door pocket. 10 minutes later, the cab pulled onto the tarmac at the private airfield.
2
nurses with umbrellas hurried forward, shielding her from the rain as they helped her up the stairs into the cabin of the Gulfstream G650. As the jet engines roared to life and the aircraft climbed into the heavy gray clouds, Chloe closed her eyes. She did not look back at the city. She did not shed a single tear for the child she had never met, nor for the love she had buried in the mud. She simply slept. 3 months passed. In the corporate world of Oakhaven, the name Chloe Miller had become a ghost
story.
On the surface, Sterling Enterprises maintained the illusion of grandeur.
The
company launched its flagship artificial intelligence logistics platform, an initiative Ethan had championed for over a year. The PR campaign featured Ethan and Natalie as the resilient golden couple who had overcome tragedy and betrayal. Behind the closed doors of the executive boardroom, however, the structure was rotting from the inside out. What do you mean the algorithm has an architectural flaw? Ethan's voice echoed. Across the 60-foot mahogany conference table, he looked terrible. In 90 days, he had lost 15 pounds. His tailored suits hung loosely on his shoulders, his jaw was shadowed with dark stubble, and the veins in his eyes were permanently bloodshot from a diet consisting entirely of black coffee, nicotine, and prescription sleeping pills that never worked. The chief technology officer, a middle-aged engineer named David Leong, wiped sweat from his forehead. Ethan, the core code, wasn't written by the software vendor. It was written by Chloe. She was the one who personally optimized the data pipelines and wrote the fail-safe protocols. When she resigned, she didn't sabotage anything. She just took her personal intellectual property with her and left the standard commercial license. Then renew the license. Ethan slammed his palm on the table. We can't. David shouted in frustration. Vanguard Global bought the exclusive worldwide patent rights to her proprietary logic framework 6 weeks ago.
If we
deploy this platform on Monday, Vanguard will slap us with an injunction in federal court that will freeze every bank account this company owns. Ethan's breath seized. Vanguard? Why would Vanguard have her patents? Because Chloe Miller is their new senior vice president of strategic acquisitions, David said, dropping a glossy copy of the Financial Times onto the table. Ethan lunged for the magazine. On the front cover, standing against the backdrop of the Swiss Alps in a tailored charcoal coat, was Chloe. Her hair was cut into a sharp, elegant bob. Her eyes, once soft and warm, whenever they looked at him, were now crystalline and impenetrable, radiating an aura of untouchable authority. There was no trace of the quiet secretary who used to iron his shirts or sit quietly in the back row taking meeting minutes. She looked like an empress who had reclaimed her throne. Beside her, Marcus Vance stood with a glass of champagne, raising a toast to the completion of Vanguard's $3 billion European merger. Ethan's heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. She's alive. She's safe. That was his first instinctive thought. But the relief was instantly crushed beneath an overwhelming, suffocating wave of despair. She was not just alive. She was thriving in a world where he did not exist, working for the very man he despised most. Ethan, his secretary's voice came over the intercom, nervous and trembling. Miss Davis is in your office. She's demanding to see you. Ethan closed his eyes. The headache behind his temples throbbed with excruciating intensity. Tell her to leave. She brought her attorney, sir. And the press is gathering in the lobby. Again. Ethan stood up, his joints aching as if he were an old man.
He walked down the
corridor toward his corner office, the employees averting their eyes as he
passed.
Inside the office, Natalie was lounging on the Italian leather sofa, sipping an iced latte. She was dressed in an expensive Chanel tweed suit, her diamond-encrusted wedding ring, the one Ethan had bought under pressure, glinting in the afternoon sun. Her attorney, a shark named Harrison Cross, stood beside her with a briefcase. Ethan, darling, Natalie purred, setting her coffee down. You've been avoiding my calls for 3 weeks. The baby's nursery needs to be finished and the construction crew said you froze the secondary credit line. Ethan walked behind his desk, not bothering to look at her. He pulled open the center drawer, removed a manila envelope, and tossed it across the glass surface. It slid to a halt right in front of Cross. The prenatal DNA test results came in from the forensic lab in Boston this morning, Ethan said, his voice completely devoid of emotion. Natalie's smug expression faltered for a fraction of a second. Ethan, we already know it's your baby. The sample was taken via non-invasive maternal blood testing under court order. Ethan continued, leaning back in his leather chair. The gestational Parentage was compared against my genetic markers. He paused, his cold eyes finally lifting to meet Natalie's. The match probability is 0%. The room went dead still. Cross cleared his throat, quickly glancing down at the document. His professional composure shattered instantly. Miss Davis, is this true? It's a lie. Natalie shrieked, jumping to her feet, her composure disintegrating into wild, frantic panic. He bribed the lab. He's trying to cheat me out of my marital settlement. I didn't bribe anyone, Ethan said quietly. But I did hire an investigator to look into your whereabouts during our trip to Miami 5 months ago. The trip where Chloe carried your bags while you claimed you were too dizzy to walk. Ethan clicked a button on his desktop monitor, turning the screen toward them. On the screen were time-stamped high-definition photographs from the surveillance cameras of a private boutique hotel in South Beach. They showed Natalie, very much alert and laughing, wrapped around the neck of Tyler Jenkins in a private cabana. Tyler, Ethan whispered, the word tasting like poison. My best friend.
And my fiance Sevier.
Natalie took a step back, her chest heaving, her face turning an ugly, blotchy
gray.
You two planned this from the very beginning, didn't you? Ethan said, his voice dangerously soft. The crash was an accident, but everything after that was a calculated execution. You wanted my wealth. Tyler wanted my company.
And
Clara. Clara was just a greedy, pathetic lapdog who wanted a piece of the
pie.
Ethan, listen to me. Natalie stammered, tears of genuine terror streaming down her cheeks now. Tyler forced me. He told me if I didn't play along, he'd expose that I was faking the amnesia. Save it for the judge, Ethan said. The heavy double doors of the office swung open for officers from the State Financial Crimes Division and 2 private security guards entered, led by the district attorney. Natalie Davis, the lead officer stated, unholstering a pair of steel handcuffs. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit grand larceny, insurance fraud exceeding $2 million, and criminal falsification of medical records.
No.
Ethan, you can't do this to me. I saved Chloe's life. Natalie screamed, thrashing as the cold steel snapped around her wrists. Ethan, tell them.
Tell
them who I am. Ethan didn't move. He didn't look at her as they dragged her out of the office, her heels scraping across the hardwood floor, her shrieks echoing down the executive hallway until the elevator doors sealed her away. Ethan sat alone in the vast, empty office. He looked down at the copy of the Financial Times on his desk. He reached out, with a trembling hand, his thumb gently tracing the outline of Chloe's face on the glossy paper. Chloe, he sobbed, the sound breaking from his chest like a dying gasp. He buried his face in his hands, alone in the kingdom he had built, weeping into the silence that would never answer him again. 6 months later, New York City. The annual International Venture Capital Summit at the Plaza Hotel was the most prestigious gathering of wealth and influence on the continent. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over 500 of the world's most powerful corporate leaders, diplomats, and industry titans. Ethan stood near the edge of the ballroom, clutching a glass of untouched bourbon. He had fought tooth and nail to secure an invitation. Sterling Enterprises was on the brink of bankruptcy. After the public arrest of Natalie Davis and Tyler Jenkins, the company's reputation had been shredded. Lawsuits from defrauded investors were piling up, and the bank had given him 30 days to secure a $50 million equity infusion, or they would foreclose on his corporate assets. This gala was his final lifeline, and he knew she would be here. A sudden hush rippled through the grand ballroom. The chatter of billionaires and socialites dissolved into murmurs of awe as the central oak door swung open. The master of ceremonies announced, representing Vanguard Global, managing director Chloe Miller. Ethan's heart stopped. Chloe stepped into the ballroom, and the light seemed to bend toward her. She wore an architectural gown of deep midnight blue, backless and sleek, cut from silk that shifted like liquid water as she moved.
Around her neck was a
collar of raw diamonds, but it was her eyes that commanded the room. They were cool, sharp, and brilliantly clear. Beside her, industry veterans twice her age bowed slightly as they greeted her, treating her not as a guest, but as an apex predator who held their financial destinies in her hands. Ethan felt his feet moving before his brain could process the command. He pushed past the CEOs and European ambassadors, knocking an empty glass from a waiter's tray. He didn't care. The noise, the lights, the entire world vanished. until there was only her. Chloe, he whispered. Chloe paused mid-conversation with a German banking executive. She turned her head slowly. When her eyes landed on Ethan, there was no shock. There was no anger. There was not even the faintest flicker of resentment. There was only a vast, infinite emptiness. Mr. Sterling, she said, her voice smooth and perfectly modulated. I see. Oakhaven managed to spare you for the evening. Ethan choked on his own breath. Hearing his surname on her lips felt like a jagged blade dragged across his throat. Chloe, please, Ethan pleaded, stepping closer, his hands shaking at his
Sides.
5 minutes. Just give me 5 minutes to speak to you. I'm begging.
You.
The German executive frowned, stepping forward to intervene, but Chloe raised a single, manicured hand, stopping him. It's all right, Herr Weber, Chloe said calmly. An old acquaintance from my early career. Give us a moment. Weber nodded and stepped away, though his eyes remained watchful. Chloe took a slow sip of her sparkling water, looking at Ethan with a detached curiosity of a scientist observing a specimen under glass. You have 3 minutes, Mr. Sterling. Make them count. Ethan's knees almost gave out. Chloe, I know everything. I know Natalie faked the amnesia. I know she and Tyler were sleeping together. I had them arrested. Natalie is facing 10 years in Bedford Hills. Tyler's assets have been seized. Clara has been disowned. She's working as a cashier in Maine, completely cut off from the family. He took a frantic step forward, his voice cracking with desperate, suffocating
Emotion.
I was blind, Chloe. I was a coward. I let my guilt over the accident turn me into a monster. But every day for the last 9 months has been pure hell.
I can't sleep.
I can't eat. I see your face every time I close my eyes.
The
House. I burned everything Natalie touched. I rebuilt the balcony with your roses. I bought back our old engagement ring from the auction house. He pulled a small velvet box from his inner pocket, snapping it open with trembling fingers. Inside lay the simple platinum band they had picked out together 5 years ago, in a dusty antique shop, when they had barely $50 between them. Come home, Chloe. Ethan wept openly, oblivious to the high society crowd, turning to stare at them. Take the company. Take everything I own. Just let me spend the rest of my life making it up to you. Let me be your secretary. Let me carry your bags. Just don't look at me like I'm a stranger. Chloe looked down at the ring in the velvet box. For a moment, the ballroom was entirely silent save for the soft strains of a string quartet in the balcony. Then, Chloe let out a soft, quiet sigh. She reached out, picked up the ring from the velvet cushion, and held it between her thumb and forefinger. Ethan's eyes lit up with a wild, desperate spark of hope. Chloe? Chloe looked at the band, her expression serenely thoughtful. Do you know what I thought about on that pavement, Ethan? She asked quietly. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. I was lying in my own blood, Chloe continued, her voice so steady and calm. It was terrifying. Watching you carry Natalie away because she claimed her head hurt. And as the ambulance sirens were fading, I realized something that set me free. She looked up, meeting his bloodshot eyes with an icy gaze that shattered his soul into dust. I realized that the worst thing that happened to me wasn't the car crash. It wasn't losing my best friend. It wasn't even losing the child I carried for 2 months. She paused, tilting her hand. The platinum ring slipped from her fingers. It fell through the air, landing with a soft, hollow plink into the half-empty glass of sparkling water on the high-top table beside them. The worst thing that ever happened to me, Chloe whispered, leaning close. Enough that only he could hear, was wasting 6 years of my life believing you were a man worthy of being loved. Ethan stumbled back as if struck by a physical blow. The color drained from his face until he looked like a corpse. Chloe, please. Your 3 minutes are up, Mr. Sterling, Chloe said, turning her back on him smoothly. Marcus Vance appeared at her side, offering his arm with effortless elegance. Chloe took it without hesitation, offering Marcus a genuine, radiant smile, a smile Ethan realized with agonizing finality he would never see again. Shall we proceed to the dinner, Miss Miller? Marcus asked, casting a single, dismissive glance at Ethan that carried all the weight of a titan stepping over an insect. Of course, Marcus, Chloe replied. We have an acquisition to finalize. They walked away, swallowed by the glittering crowd, the doors of the private dining room closing behind them like the gates of a paradise Ethan Sterling had burned with his own hands. 1 year later, The foreclosure auction of Sterling Enterprises headquarters was held on a gray Tuesday morning. Ethan stood on the opposite sidewalk, wearing a worn wool coat with frayed
Cuffs.
his company was gone, bought out for pennies on the dollar by Vanguard Global and restructured under their new automated logistics division.
His
Penthouse had been liquidated to satisfy creditor claims. His name was a cautionary tale taught in business schools, a case study in how personal cowardice and moral rot can destroy an empire in under 12 months. A black Maybach pulled up to the curb in front of the building. The chauffeur stepped out, opening the rear door. Chloe stepped out onto the sidewalk. She was dressed in an ivory cashmere coat, a leather portfolio tucked beneath her arm. She paused for a moment, looking up at the towering glass structure she had designed from scratch half a decade ago. Then, she turned her head. Across the 4 lanes of traffic, through the light autumn drizzle, her eyes met Ethan's. Ethan didn't move. He didn't wave. He didn't cross the street. He simply stood there in the rain, a broken, hollow ghost of the man he used to be, staring at the woman who had conquered the world without him. Chloe looked at him for 2 seconds. Her gaze was not filled with triumph. It was not filled with malice.
It was the
Same gaze one might cast upon an old, forgotten lamppost or a fallen leaf on the sidewalk, a thing of absolute, total insignificance. She turned back, adjusted the lapel of her coat, and walked up the granite steps. Into the building, the heavy brass doors closing behind her. Ethan stood in the rain for a long time. Then, with no home to return to and no promises left to break, he turned his collar up against the cold wind and walked away into the crowd, disappearing forever into the gray horizon.